Right now, as you're watching this, there's a chemical reaction happening inside your body that is slowly shutting down blood flow to the one area every man over 60 desperately needs it. And here's what makes this truly alarming. Your doctor probably hasn't told you about it. Your blood tests won't flag it, and most men don't realize it's happening until they're sitting across from their partner, frustrated, embarrassed, and wondering what went wrong. I'm Dr. Natalia Parker, and I'm going to walk you through exactly what's going on and how to reverse it. Let me be direct with you. If your erections have become weaker, less reliable, or have practically disappeared, what I'm about to share could change the trajectory of your intimate health in ways you didn't think were still possible at your age. Because the root cause I'm referring to isn't low testosterone, it isn't psychological. It's something far more fundamental, something hiding in the chemistry of your blood itself, and the solution might already be sitting in your kitchen cabinet. But before I reveal what it is and how to use it, you need to understand why your body is betraying you in the first place. Because without that understanding, nothing I tell you later will make sense. Here's what nobody explains to men after 60. Your body is quietly becoming more acidic every single day. The food you eat, the stress you carry, the medications you take, even the natural process of aging itself pushes your internal environment towards something called low-grade metabolic acidosis. Now, that sounds technical, but what it means in practical terms is devastating. When your blood becomes even slightly more acidic than it should be, a cascade of failures begins. Your blood thickens, your arteries stiffen, the delicate lining inside your blood vessels starts to malfunction. And the molecule your body absolutely depends on to create an erection, it gets suffocated. That molecule is called nitric oxide. Think of it as the master key that unlocks the door to blood flow. Without enough of it, the smooth muscles in your arteries can't relax, blood can't rush in, and firmness becomes impossible. But here's the part that should concern you most, and I'll explain exactly why in a moment. This acidic environment doesn't just reduce nitric oxide. It damages the very cells that produce it, meaning the longer this goes uncorrected, the harder it becomes to reverse. It's not just a slow decline, it's an accelerating one. Now, I had a patient named Roberto, 71 years old, came to see me after what he described as the most humiliating year of his life. He told me he'd stopped initiating intimacy with his wife entirely because the fear of failure was worse than the loneliness. He'd tried supplements, he'd tried the blue pill. Some things worked partially, temporarily, but nothing addressed why his body had stopped cooperating in the first place. When I examined his blood work and ran some specific markers most doctors overlook, I found exactly what I expected. His system was running acidic, his inflammatory markers were elevated, his vascular function was compromised, and his body was trapped in a cycle it couldn't break on its own. What I suggested to Roberto was so simple he almost laughed. But what happened over the next several weeks wiped that skepticism right off his face, and I'll tell you his exact results shortly. First, though, you need to grasp the full picture of what acidity does to a man's body, because the damage goes far beyond erections, and understanding this is the key to understanding why one simple intervention can produce such dramatic, wide-ranging effects. When your blood pH drops even slightly below its ideal range of about 7.4, your red blood cells lose their flexibility. Picture them as tiny discs that need to squeeze through blood vessels thinner than a human hair. In a healthy alkaline environment, they bend and flex effortlessly, but in an acidic environment, they become rigid, they clump, they stick together. And the first place you notice this? The smallest, most delicate blood vessels in your body, the ones responsible for filling the erectile tissue. It's like trying to push marbles through a drinking straw instead of water. The flow simply cannot happen the way it needs to. But that's only the first domino. The second one is even more insidious. When your blood is acidic, your hemoglobin, the protein inside red blood cells that carries oxygen, holds onto that oxygen too tightly. It refuses to release it where it's needed. So even the blood that does reach the erectile tissue arrives carrying oxygen it won't let go of. The tissue is starved. Energy production drops. The cells responsible for maintaining firmness simply don't have the fuel to do their job. You might get a partial response enough to give you hope, but not enough to sustain anything meaningful. And you're left wondering if it's all in your head. It's not. it's in your blood. The third domino is inflammation, silent, invisible, and relentless. Acidic blood triggers your immune system to release inflammatory compounds called cytokines. These cytokines attack the endothelium, that critical inner lining of your blood vessels I mentioned earlier. They make it thick, rough, and dysfunctional. Remember, the endothelium is the factory that produces nitric oxide. When it's damaged, production plummets. And without nitric oxide, the signal to relax, expand, and fill with blood never arrives. Your body is sending the message, but the receiver is broken. Now, here's where everything connects, and this is the part most people never hear. There is a naturally occurring compound that acts as a systemic alkalizer, capable of neutralizing this excess acid, restoring blood fluidity, protecting the endothelium, and creating the internal conditions your body needs to produce nitric oxide on its own again. It's sodium bicarbonate, common baking soda. And before you dismiss that as too simple, let me walk you through the specific biological mechanisms, one by one, because the science behind this is anything but simple. When you ingest a small amount of sodium bicarbonate dissolved in warm water, it enters your bloodstream and begins neutralizing excess hydrogen ions, the particles responsible for acidity. Your blood pH starts shifting back toward its optimal alkaline range. As this happens, those rigid, clumping red blood cells begin to soften and separate. Blood viscosity drops. Flow improves. And suddenly, the smallest capillaries in your body, including the ones feeding the erectile chambers, start receiving the volume of blood they've been starved of. Simultaneously, as the pH normalizes, hemoglobin releases its grip on oxygen. Each red blood cell arriving at the erectile tissue now delivers its full payload instead of hoarding it. More oxygen means more energy production inside those cells. The mitochondria, your cellular power plants, begin functioning at higher capacity. And I need to tell you something critical about these mitochondria that almost nobody discusses, but I'll get to that in a moment because it connects to a deeper mechanism that explains why some men see truly remarkable turnarounds. The anti-inflammatory effect is equally significant. By reducing the acid load in your bloodstream, you're essentially turning down the volume on the inflammatory signals attacking your blood vessel walls. Cytokine production decreases. The endothelium gets a chance to heal. And as it heals, it begins producing nitric oxide again, naturally, without medication, without external supplements. Your body remembers how to do this. It just needed the right environment. Let me tell you about another patient, Alejandro, 68 years old. He'd been dealing with mild hypertension for years. His blood pressure medication had it under control, but his intimate function had deteriorated steadily. He hadn't had a spontaneous morning erection in over 2 years. Morning erections, by the way, are one of the most reliable indicators of vascular health in the pelvic region. Their absence almost always signals compromised blood flow. 5 weeks after starting the protocol I'm going to share with you, Alejandro called my office. He didn't even wait for his scheduled appointment. He told my staff he'd woken up 3 mornings in a row with firm, spontaneous erections and that his wife had noticed a difference he hadn't experienced in years. That wasn't placebo. That was his vascular system recovering. But the benefits extend beyond circulation. And this is where it gets really interesting. Your liver and kidneys are constantly processing acidic waste products. When the acid load is excessive, these organs become overburdened. A fatigued liver doesn't metabolize hormones efficiently. Specifically, it struggles to maintain the proper balance between testosterone and estrogen. Yes, men produce estrogen too, and when the liver can't clear it properly, estrogen levels rise while testosterone's effectiveness drops. Sodium bicarbonate eases this burden by neutralizing a portion of that acid load before it even reaches these organs. The result is cleaner hormonal processing and a more favorable testosterone to estrogen ratio. Speaking of testosterone, here's something that will surprise you. Many men over 60 have what appears to be adequate testosterone on blood tests, yet they experience all the symptoms of low testosterone: diminished desire, weaker responses, fatigue, loss of confidence. The reason? Their cells have become resistant to testosterone. The receptors on the cell surfaces that should be receiving the signal have become desensitized, And one of the primary contributors to this receptor resistance is chronic metabolic acidosis. By correcting the pH environment, you're essentially recalibrating these receptors. The testosterone signal, which had been muffled like a voice through a thick wall, suddenly becomes clear and strong. Your cells can hear it again. They can respond. If you're watching from somewhere around the world right now and nodding along because this sounds exactly like what you've been experiencing, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I see men from dozens of countries dealing with this exact situation, and every single one of them deserves to know the truth. Now, remember when I said I'd explain the mitochondrial connection? This is crucial. Every cell inside the cavernous bodies of your penis, those spongy structures that fill with blood during arousal, contains thousands of mitochondria. These aren't just energy factories. They're also signaling centers. They communicate with the rest of the cell about when to relax, when to contract, when to allow blood in, and when to keep it there. In an acidic environment, these mitochondria produce excessive amounts of what scientists call reactive oxygen species, essentially toxic exhaust fumes. These ROS damage cell membranes, corrupt proteins, and even alter DNA within the erectile tissue. The cells age faster, they function worse, and the damage compounds over time. When you restore an alkaline environment with sodium bicarbonate, mitochondrial efficiency improves dramatically. Less toxic waste is produced. More clean energy is generated. But here's the fascinating part that researchers are only now beginning to fully appreciate. The bicarbonate ion itself participates directly in the Krebs cycle, the fundamental energy-producing process inside every mitochondrion. You're not just creating better conditions for energy production. You're providing the raw material for it. This translates to cells with more stamina, more responsiveness, and more capacity for sustained function. There's another dimension to this that I must share with you because it connects everything. Your gut. The ecosystem of bacteria living in your intestines has a profound influence on inflammation throughout your entire body, including your blood vessels. When the intestinal environment becomes too acidic, harmful bacteria and fungi like Candida thrive while beneficial bacteria decline. These harmful organisms produce toxins called endotoxins that can leak through the intestinal wall into your bloodstream, a condition increasingly recognized as a driver of systemic inflammation. This gut-derived inflammation directly attacks vascular health and nitric oxide production. Sodium bicarbonate taken on an empty stomach helps neutralize upper gastrointestinal acidity, creating conditions that favor beneficial bacterial growth. More importantly, it helps maintain the integrity of the intestinal barrier itself. When the spaces between intestinal cells are compromised by acidity, toxins pass freely into the blood. By supporting proper pH in the gut, you're essentially sealing those gaps. Fewer toxins reach your bloodstream, less systemic inflammation results, and your endothelium stays healthier and more productive. Now, there's one more mechanism I need to address because I see it constantly in my practice and it's almost never discussed in this context. Subclinical insulin resistance. You don't have to be diabetic for this to affect you. A huge number of men over 60 develop a mild form of insulin resistance where cells don't respond properly to insulin. This creates a vicious cycle. Insulin resistance promotes abdominal fat accumulation. Abdominal fat contains an enzyme called aromatase that converts testosterone into estrogen. More fat means more conversion, which means less available testosterone and more estrogen. Additionally, insulin-resistant cells have poorly functioning mitochondria, which circles back to everything I just explained about energy production and erectile function. Now, I've created a comprehensive medical guide specifically about the mistakes that damage prostate health after 60, because many of these same mechanisms overlap with prostate issues in ways most men don't realize. That guide is available for free in the pinned comment below this video. If what I'm sharing today resonates with you, that guide will take your understanding even deeper. Check the pinned comment when you have a moment. Back to insulin resistance. The sodium bicarbonate protocol acts as a natural insulin sensitizer. By improving blood and tissue pH, cells regain their ability to respond to insulin properly. This breaks the vicious cycle. Better insulin sensitivity leads to less abdominal fat accumulation, which means less testosterone to estrogen conversion, which means more free testosterone available to fuel desire and function. One simple morning ritual creating a positive cascade across multiple interconnected systems. Let me also address something that affects nearly every man but rarely gets connected to intimate function: the nervous system. To achieve an erection, your parasympathetic nervous system, the one responsible for rest, relaxation, and restoration, must be dominant. But chronic stress keeps your sympathetic system, the fight or flight response, constantly activated. And here's what connects this to everything we've discussed. Chronic stress acidifies your body. The stress hormones themselves produce acidic metabolic byproducts. So stress creates acidity. Acidity impairs vascular function. Impaired vascular function increases performance anxiety, and performance anxiety creates more stress. Another vicious cycle. By helping to buffer that acid load, sodium bicarbonate has a calming, indirect effect on the nervous system. It doesn't sedate you. It removes one of the chemical drivers keeping your fight or flight system engaged. This allows the parasympathetic system to assert itself when the moment calls for it, opening the gates to pelvic blood flow instead of diverting it to your muscles and brain as if you were running from danger. Now, the protocol itself. It's straightforward, but must be followed with precision and consistency. Dissolve between 1/4 and 1/2 teaspoon of sodium bicarbonate in a glass of warm water. Add the juice of half a fresh lemon or 1 teaspoon of organic apple cider vinegar. I know that sounds contradictory, adding something acidic to an alkalizing drink. But lemon and apple cider vinegar, once metabolized, actually produce an alkalizing effect in the body. The combination creates an effervescent reaction that enhances absorption. Plus, lemon provides vitamin C and bioflavonoids, powerful antioxidants that offer additional protection to your vascular endothelium. Drink this every morning on an empty stomach. Wait at least 20 minutes before eating anything. Remember Roberto? The man who almost laughed when I told him what to do? After 3 weeks, he sat across from me with a look I'd never seen on his face before. He told me his energy had returned first. Within the first week, his digestion improved. He felt lighter. Then, around week 3, he noticed the changes that mattered most to him. Sensations he thought were gone permanently began returning. Responses he hadn't experienced in years started showing up again. By week 6, he told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Doctor, I feel like my body woke up from a long sleep, not just down there, everywhere." That's the systemic nature of what this protocol addresses. It's not targeting one symptom, it's correcting the underlying environment that was causing multiple symptoms simultaneously. I want to be transparent with you about expectations. This is not an overnight transformation. Your body didn't become acidic in a day, and it won't fully rebalance in a day. Most men notice energy improvements and better digestion within the first week. Improvements in intimate function typically emerge between 3 and 8 weeks of consistent daily use. Patience and persistence are essential. The men who see the most dramatic results are the ones who commit to this as a daily ritual, not an occasional experiment. And I must give you an important caution. If you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, severe heart conditions, serious kidney problems, or are on a sodium-restricted diet, you absolutely must consult your physician before starting this. For the vast majority of men, this protocol is safe and well tolerated, but your individual health situation always comes first. What I've shared with you today represents something I genuinely believe every man over 60 deserves to know. The connection between your body's acid-base balance and your intimate vitality is real, it's scientifically grounded, and it's actionable. You don't have to accept decline as inevitable. You don't have to spend hundreds on supplements that treat symptoms while ignoring the root cause. And you certainly don't have to suffer in silence, convinced that your best years are behind you. But I also want to leave you with this thought, because it's important. Everything I've described today, the vascular damage, the mitochondrial dysfunction, the hormonal imbalances, the inflammation, these processes don't pause while you decide what to do. Every morning that passes without addressing the acidic environment inside your body is another morning those mechanisms continue their work unchecked. That's not meant to frighten you, that's meant to motivate you. Because the same way these processes compound negatively, they compound positively once you begin correcting them. If this kind of honest, detailed health information is what you've been looking for, subscribe to this channel right now. I share knowledge here that most men will never hear from their regular doctors. Not because those doctors don't care, but because they simply don't have the time to explain it the way you deserve to have it explained. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because in upcoming videos, I'm going to reveal other simple interventions that work in powerful synergy with what you learned today. Your body hasn't given up on you. It's waiting for the right conditions to perform the way it was designed to. Give it those conditions, start tomorrow morning, and pay attention to what happens.